If you're one of those guys who is feeling left behind when it comes to dating, when it comes to finding a woman you want to share your life with, I know the feeling. I know what it feels like because it can be one of the most painful experiences a man can feel. Why? Because it makes us feel inadequate. It makes us feel like we lack self-worth. One of the worst things a man can feel, probably the worst thing a man can feel, is to feel like a loser. The good news is that you can absolutely change this. No matter what your situation is, you can make a difference, you can change this. And as much as possible, what I'm going to give you today, I tried as hard as I possibly could to give you things here that are things that you haven't heard before. And some of it will be things that you've heard before because, I mean, when we're talking about dating, there's only so many different ways of going about it. But the things that are going to sound the same, I want to give you a new approach to it that will change the way that you look at this so that it makes it easier, less painful. I know that there's a lot of seduction gurus out there on YouTube. I'm not one of them. I'm just an NLP guy who wanted to find the right woman to share my life with. And being that as it is, I knew that I could apply NLP and I had a lot to learn. And as long as I was learning and applying NLP the way that I know to do it, I was going to find my way here. After I had a divorce in my late 30s, I was back on the market for the first time in 15 years. A year after that, my rebound relationship ended, and I was terrified and angry. Why was I so frustrated? Because she was beautiful, and I knew she wasn't going to have any trouble finding someone to replace me. Me, though, on the other hand, now being thrust back into the dating scene, being single, divorced, past my rebound relationship, I didn't know when I was going to date again. Not exactly Brad Pitt. It's not it's not like women were approaching me or anything like that. So I was scared, I was frustrated, didn't know what to do. So if you're feeling that way right now, like you're sort of waiting and nothing's happening, you're in luck. Because I'm going to tell you what I learned on this journey. It took about 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to share with you my mistakes, or what I learned from my mistakes, so that you don't have to make those mistakes as well. And we're going to start with the easy stuff. Then we're going to get into some heavy stuff, followed by some practical actions that you can take. You can start right now. You can start today. And it will start to change your situation no matter where you're at in the situation with dating in your life. And of course, I'm going to save the best for last. So this is directed toward men because I only know this from my experience, and I've also talked to many men about this. I do get clients who want coaching on this from time to time. But a lot of this, if you're a woman and you're watching, you're going to find that a lot of this will work if you're looking for the ideal mate as well. Women have slightly different problems than men have. Some of them are very different. But no matter if you're a man or a woman, it's problematic. Dating is not an easy thing. But anyway, women, you're welcome to listen, and your input is welcome as well. So the first thing is, how much attention do you pay to how you look? Okay, now that's just the first part of this. Okay, don't think that you have to go and impress people, because this is not about impressing people. In fact, if you're dressing to impress people, or if you're so focused on your looks that in a way of trying to impress people, I can tell you right now that's not going to work very well, because it seems very self-conscious. It puts people off. It seems very needy, like you're waiting, you want that attention, and so you're dressing a certain way. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is bringing an awareness to your appearance, bringing an awareness to the external. How do people perceive you? So if you dress very sloppy, or you don't seem to even care, or you don't put any attention to it at all, that's what you're putting out there to other people, and especially women. And women will look at men and size them up, and they don't need to be beautiful. They don't need to look like models. but they will look at them and see, how well do you take care of yourself? How well do you groom yourself? And that will be somewhat, or they will judge you somewhat based on that. Well, how well would you take care of anything, including how well would you take care of her? So you want to be conscious of this. And the other part of it is, when you take care of yourself and you put a little bit of attention, not a lot, don't fixate on this. Like I said, if you start doing that, you will come off as very self-conscious. But if you just bring a little attention to it, then you're communicating that you're someone who takes care of yourself and you're not some sloppy, messy person. And that is attractive. It's really good to take this to the next level, though. Really try to understand how people perceive you. And we do a lot of this in Neuro Linguistic Programming. That is matching, mirroring, modeling someone else, getting in rapport with them by matching and modeling them, by pacing them, by trying to step into their world and understand how they perceive things. When you do that, it builds rapport very quickly, meaning the person feels more connected to you more quickly. But this also gives you a lot of good information about how people are perceiving you. Knowing how you are perceived, then you have more conscious awareness of that, which means you can change things. You can understand how you're being perceived, and if you don't like the way that you're being perceived, you can change it. It's not about changing who you are. It's not about compromising yourself. It's about what you're communicating. We often think that we're communicating everything we want to communicate correctly and clearly, and sometimes people don't understand our communication. Then they come back and ask questions. Well, if you just get angry at that person and say, well, why don't you just understand what I'm saying? Or why don't you just understand what I'm intending? That's not how we communicate. That's not good communication. Good communication, one of the presuppositions in NLP, is the meaning of a communication is the response it gets. That is, when you take on that presupposition, you are taking complete responsibility for your communication. So if it's not coming through, if the people are not understanding it the way that you intended, you don't argue with them and try to beat them into submission to understand it the way that you intended it. You modify your communication so that they can understand it in the way that you intended. So you take responsibility for changing that communication. That is no different when you're dating. When you're dating, if you feel like you're repelling people, or people are misunderstanding you, or they're not attracted to you, think of that as a communication. You are communicating something. And if what you're communicating isn't attracting the kind of woman you want, then you just need to modify your communication. I'm one of those people who, maybe I'm a little idealistic. I believe deep down inside, we're all good people. Deep down inside, we're all very interesting. We're all very attractive. But most people never express that. Most people never really tap into it. So that's part of your communication, is really communicating who you are and what you want people to see of you. And if you do that authentically, that's going to be attractive. You got to get the communication right. What helped me with this tremendously was doing YouTube. When I had to see myself, especially when I was making videos every single day, that's what I did for the first 8 months that I was on YouTube. I was editing my own videos. I was completely a one-man show. And I would do a video and then I would edit it, and I was like, oh my God, I look so wooden. I don't make any expressions. My voice is so monotone. Why? I wouldn't even listen to me. So as I was editing myself, when I would go back to do another video, I would course correct. I would say, okay, I'm going to put more expression into this. I'm going to do more. So I started developing a keen awareness of how I was being perceived, because I could actually literally see myself in these videos. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that. You don't have to go, I don't even think, that to me is a bit extreme, and I'm not suggesting that you go that far. But if you're one of those people who does not like the way you look on video and doesn't like the way that your voice sounds, that's a big one. When people hear their voice on video or on a recording, they freak out and they say, there's no way that I could sound like that. And it's like, yeah, that's how you sound. And when you see yourself on video, yeah, that's how you look. If you don't like it, instead of never wanting to see yourself on video and never wanting to hear your own voice, make some changes. Make some changes to how you look. I even started doing voice exercises, so that, because my voice was very monotone and it was very nasal. So I started doing some voice exercises so I could project my voice a little more, try to make it more resonant sounding, try to get it out of my nose and try to get the air going through so that it passed through easily and would not get trapped up in my nasal passage. And it worked. You might be thinking, no, it hasn't really, Damon. Oh yeah, it has. If you go back and watch my old videos from 8 years ago, I think you'll agree with me. So bring some awareness to your external appearance, your external sound, your communication. How are people perceiving you? And this is a lifelong thing. You want to do this for the rest of your life, and it will make you an incredible communicator. And so when you want to communicate attractiveness to a woman who you're interested in, it's going to be so much easier to do that because you understand how people are perceiving you. Okay, the next thing. This gets a little on the heavy stuff. Are you carrying around baggage from past relationships? Don't say no, you're not, because most of us are. And the moment we say that we're not, that's usually when some of this stuff is getting through and it's repelling the women you would probably want to attract. I still find this comes up for me every now and then, even in my own marriage, and I go, whoa, okay, need to make sure that I'm aware of this and put a stop to it. So I'll tell you a story about, this is from the opposite end of it. And when I got back into dating, I started, so I'll just put this out there. My ex-wife is 10 years older than me. And when I got a divorce, I thought, oh, well, I'll just date women my own age. I was about 37 years old. I was like, I'll date women my own age, and that'll feel like I'm dating younger women. That's kind of cool. So I started looking in that direction of women my own age. And a lot of women my age at that time had either been divorced, a lot of them had kids, and a lot of them, if they weren't divorced, they had at least been through a few rough relationships, or rough breakups, I'll say. And hey, that was me too. I had kids. I've been through a rough divorce. It was very sad. I was, still probably healing from that, but I was eager to get out and start dating again. And I started noticing that I'd go out on these dates, and these women were dragging in all of their past relationships. In fact, sometimes it got so bad that they were sort of using me as a punching bag for the last guy they dated, and taking out all of their issues on me. And I was like, this is a first date. Like, you don't even know me. And it wasn't always that bad, but it felt like every time I was going out on a date, these women were dragging in all of their baggage, their past relationships. And I'm not calling kids baggage by any means. I mean their bitterness, their anger, their frustration. They hadn't resolved it. And here I was, a guy, and they could take it out on me. And I was just like, enough of this. And sometimes it didn't show up on the first date, but it showed up on the third date or the fourth date. And I was like, okay, I can't do this. I've been through all the same stuff. I know it sucks. I know it's hard, but I refuse to take that out on anyone else. If I need to deal with that, I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to get a therapist. I'm going to work on myself. I'm not going to put it off on other people. So I started dating younger and younger women as a result, because I was like, okay, well, maybe if I go a little bit younger, they won't have all these issues. And sure enough, that was the case. As I went younger and younger, I was dating women who had not yet experienced all these divorces and bad breakups and everything. And that plays a role in something I'm going to talk about a little bit later about dating younger. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So if you're carrying around this stuff, and like I said, most of you are, most of the people watching my videos are between the ages of 35 and actually, 39 and 54, I think, or around 35 to 54. Most of you have been through that, or you've been through at least some bad breakups. Be careful that you're not dragging that in to dates that you're going on. Or even before you get to the date, if you're trying to attract that woman who you're looking to share your life with, she will sense it very quickly if you're still carrying around this stuff, and it's very unattractive, okay? So you will repel women if that is happening. So the answer to this is do the work on yourself, instead of thinking that if you find the right woman, she's going to heal you. I think a lot of guys think that, oh, if I just find the right woman, all of this stuff that I haven't dealt with, it'll just go away. No, it won't, okay? You will drag it into the relationship. You will start projecting it onto her. And here's the thing, it's not her job to heal you, okay? So that's your responsibility. Take care of that on your own. And I guarantee you, once you free yourself of a lot of that stuff, you'll start to notice women will pay more attention to you. But as long as you're carrying that around, nobody's going to want to deal with you. Nobody's going to want to date you and feel like you're taking out your last relationship or all of your past relationships out on her. She's not, any woman who you're going to want to spend the rest of your life with is not going to put up with that. So let go of the pain and limitations of your past relationships. If you don't, they will shape your future relationships. Okay? You will lose good women if you don't see them for who they are. And if you can't see past beyond your past breakups, you're not really seeing her. And she will feel that, and she's not going to stick around for that. I wouldn't stick around for that either. And what'll end up happening too is the women you will be attracting, they're kind of getting caught into your projections. You're going to end up attracting the wrong kind of person. So probably someone who's kind of doing the same thing. So you're going to relive your past relationships while she's reliving her past relationships. So you're not even really interacting with each other. You're not really sharing a real relationship with each other. This is not what you want, okay? So work on it. Otherwise, you're going to repel the right woman if you don't resolve this. Take full responsibility for the women you're attracting. This was not an easy thing for me. It's not an easy thing to do because it's not as clear as you think it could be. So if you're in this situation where you're attracting a certain kind of woman and none of them seem to line up with what you're really looking for or the kind of woman you want to settle down with, you want to take this responsibility that the woman you are attracting, you're finding her based on what you're putting out there. Okay, so let's take this slow. So you're dating a bunch of women. Let's say you are. Let's say you're dating some women. Okay, and they're nice people. You like spending time with them, but you realize this is not just really going anywhere. Understand that is because of something you're putting out there. So you're putting something out there that is attracting this kind of woman. So what does that mean? You need to put something else out there to attract the woman you want. You have to understand what it is that you're putting out there before you can change it as well. Okay, so I'll give you my story as my example to better understand this. After getting out of a marriage and having a rebound relationship, and then starting to slip into another relationship, one of the things I started to realize was how similar these women were. And the way that they were similar was they all tended to be very passive aggressive. They all tended to be fly below the radar very well. That's what good passive aggressive people or effective passive aggressive people can do. They can fly below the radar so you don't see it, and then they end up manipulating you in some way. You don't understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and they're able to move you in this direction or that direction by making you feel bad. And by the third or fourth time this happened, I was like, what is going on? And there was a crossroads. There was an opportunity here. I could have just assumed, because all the women in my orbit were acting this way, I could have just assumed and made this gross generalization that all women are like this. This is what all women do. This is the way all women treat men. Or I could say, there must be something I'm putting out there that is attracting this kind of woman, and until I change that, I'm going to keep attracting this kind of woman. So I chose the latter. I don't like gross generalizations about any gender, any race, or anything like that. So I said, okay, this is probably more about me. I believe that there are really good women out there. I believe that there is someone out there who is going to be a really good fit for me, who I want to share the rest of my life with. That was my hypothesis. So I told myself I am not going to get into a relationship for at least a year. It doesn't matter how great she seems. I need to understand what is happening here. And I went an entire year doing lots of dating. I learned a lot. And I thought, okay, it's coming up to this end of this year. I've been seeing someone for a while, and she seems like a good catch, and I want to pursue this more with her. Well, right before the year ended, she pulled something like this that had all the same red flags, passive aggressiveness, and right away I put a stop to it. And I said, okay, this is over. I'm not doing this. And I was like, wow, okay, still, she somehow flew below radar. She somehow got into me, and she was about to get me to do things that would have compromised my values. I'll just put it that way. And so I thought, okay, I need another year. Obviously, I don't understand what's happening here. And so after another year, I started to see it. I started to see these types of women being attracted to me, and I started to realize it was because I was putting a vulnerability out there too soon in the dating. And these women would see that, and they would think, oh, I can manipulate him. I can get into him. He's kind of sensitive. I can make him feel bad about things. And when I do that, then I can get him to do what I want him to do. And when I started to see that, the more I dated and the more I kept them at an arm's distance, I could start to see the passive aggressiveness popping up. And then I would call them out on it. The one thing that passive aggressive people do not want is to be called out. That's why it's passive aggressiveness and not overt aggressiveness. So as soon as I would point it out, these women would get out of my life. And this is true for men. It's true for any passive aggressive people. If you call out their passive aggressiveness, if that's their main strategy, they're going to get away from you because you just called them out for what they've been trying to hide behind. And that's the last thing that they want. That breaks their strategy. So they would rather just move on and find someone else they can do that with. Once I started to see that, and I started to call it out right away, like it could have even been on the first date, I didn't have this problem anymore. And so another year passed, and thankfully did not get into any relationships with those types of women. And as a result, things started to shift, things started to change. I started to attract a different kind of woman who was much more suited to who I was looking for, and having a genuine, healthy relationship that was not about manipulation. So you might also be saying right now, well, wait a minute. You're saying, I'm attracting the kind of woman that I'm putting the kind of woman I'm attracting has to do with what I'm putting out there. Well, I'm not attracting any women, Damon. I'm not getting anything out of this right now. No woman is attracted to me. I'm not dating. I'm not doing anything. So what does that tell you about what you're putting out there? It tells you that you're probably not putting anything out there. And that's never going to work. It's never going to work. And that brings me to the next piece of this, the tip that I can give you on this. Anyway, just know right now that it's time to change that. If you're just kind of sitting there passively, not putting anything out there, that's not ever going to work. And you know that because you're already experiencing that. So the next piece of this, and some of you might go, ooh, I don't like the way this sounds. Bear with me, okay? Think like a salesperson. Think like a salesperson when it comes to dating. And I'm not saying that about your relationships. I'm only saying that about dating. What I realized, especially after these breakups, these rebound relationships and these breakups, what I realized is that I wanted an abundance when it came to my dating life. I looked at women, these women who were, I was having these relationships with, and then we'd break up and they were off and they could have a man the very next day. They could be going out on dates the very next day. I didn't have that. And so I thought to myself, I want that kind of abundance. I want that kind of wealth in dating. And what I was seeing, especially the more attractive women, they didn't have to work for that. It came to them, okay? I knew I was going to have to work for it. Men, unless you're famous, unless you're a supermodel, you're going to have to work for it. And you want to be willing to work for that, to create that kind of abundance in your life. And if you're sitting back and saying, well, it's not fair because women don't have to do that and I have to work for it, as long as you're stuck in this whole it's not fair thing, you're never going anywhere with this. Life isn't fair. You're born into this world not deserving anything. You die not deserving anything. You don't come into this world with anything. You don't leave with anything. Let that go. Okay, if you're still caught up in that it's not fair with women, that's just going to hold you back. And the only one who's really going to lose in that deal is you more than anyone else. Let it go. If you have animosity towards women in any way whatsoever, that is going to get in your way. Let it go. Okay. So if you want to create that abundance in your life, think about it like this. I was in insurance and I was in insurance sales. And one of the things I had to learn very quickly is that it took, say, X amount of phone calls to speak to Y amount of people to make Z amount of appointments. All right, so this is what we call a funnel. I had to make enough calls to talk to enough people to then get enough appointments. And if you're familiar with the concept of the law of averages, you start to understand when you're in sales how many of those calls you need to make. It starts to have its own average. You'll start to see a pattern there. You'll start to know exactly how many calls you need to make in order to talk to, if you make 100 calls, you're probably going to talk to 30 people. And if you talk to 30 people, you might get 10 appointments. And you'll see that that works pretty consistently. And as you get better at it, as you get better at talking to people, you'll be able to increase those percentages. So continuing on with my sales metaphor, the best way to sell is door to door, like in person. And every salesperson knows that. But that takes up a lot of time, right? So some people put up billboards instead. So the best way to sell would be door to door. The worst way to sell is billboards. Billboards rarely sell anything. If you pass them on the highway while you're driving, you rarely ever stop and make a call and buy something off that billboard. But that's how most men are dealing with dating. They think if they can just kind of like put themselves in a social place, that it's just going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like I said, unless you're famous, unless you're extraordinarily beautiful as a man, that ain't happening, okay? So the equivalent of going door to door is what we call cold approaching. That means you see a woman who's attractive, you just walk up and introduce yourself and let her know why you are approaching her. Don't make up some other stuff like you're asking for directions or anything like that. That's just going to confuse her. You walk up to a woman, you're nice, you're positive, you introduce yourself, and you say why you're approaching her. You can just say something simple like, I found you attractive and I really wanted to meet you. That's simple, okay? Now the equivalent of a billboard, like I said, is putting yourself in a social situation and just thinking that somehow magically women are going to start talking to you. Rarely ever happens. Don't count on it. The next kind of level of that is the online dating scene. Some guys get really good at this. I was never great at it. I got decent at it, I guess I would say. But put it this way, most online dating sites or apps are usually 70% men and 30% women. So right there, that should tell you the odds are stacked against you. It's very unlikely. You're not going to have the sort of abundance and the choice that women have on that, and that's usually going to translate to you not really being able to find the person who you're looking for. I'm not saying never. I know I've met people who met online and it worked out. I have friends who are married who met online and it worked out. So I'm not saying it can never work. I'm just saying you have to do a lot of waiting, and the odds are not in your favor. It's really, really difficult. But I think for a lot of men, they're more comfortable with that because it preserves their ego. Whereas cold approaching, you run the risk of rejection. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The other thing I would say about cold approaching is don't do what's called indirect game. If you're familiar with the pickup artist subculture, I guess you could call it, there's what they call direct game and there's what they call indirect game. I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you do not do indirect game. Indirect game is this idea where you approach someone, like I mentioned before, under a false pretense, like you're asking for directions. And then you gradually, little by little, get her to warm up to you, and then you play these little games that is supposed to make her more and more attracted to you. And the whole point of it is to not play your hand, to not let her know that it's because you're interested in her. The problem with this is, and I'm not saying it doesn't work sometimes, I'm sure it does work. The problem with this is, why would you do that? You would only do that if you're terribly insecure and that you're so afraid of the woman telling you that she's not interested in you that you have to play all these little games to sort of preserve your ego, to protect your ego. And you learn nothing from this. It only makes you more insecure. make this a personal development, personal growth pursuit. Find out what you can learn. Find out what it's like to face what is called rejection. I don't even like calling it rejection because she's really not rejecting you. When a woman says she's not interested, that's not, I mean, when you say rejection, it makes this sound like she's turns you to dust or something like that. It's like, no, there are so many things and so many people you're not interested in. You don't feel so strongly about them when you just say, I'm not interested. You know, if somebody tries to give you a sample of food in a food court and you say you're not interested, did you reject that person? That's pretty extreme, right? So this is the same thing. If you approach a woman and you're nice and you say positive things and you let her know why you're approaching her and she just says, hey, I got a boyfriend. Thank you, but I'm not interested. Is that a rejection? I don't take it that way. That's just, she's not interested. That's all it is. But so many guys have never put themselves in that situation and have never endured that. So they have this sort of false sense of security that the moment someone says something, or a woman, because men do place a lot on what women think of them, the moment a woman tells them something that they don't want to hear, they fall apart. Well, you want to learn to be stronger than that. And how you're going to become stronger is by experiencing it. And the more you experience it, the more it won't mean anything to you. You just go, oh, okay, she has a boyfriend, she has a husband, she's not interested for whatever reason. That it shouldn't bother you, but it does, right? I know it does. It's the scariest thing for most men to think of, just walking up to a woman and just letting her know that you find her attractive and that you wanted to talk to her and you wanted to meet her. It's such a simple thing, but yes, I know what it's like because I walked through that fire many times. So what happens is, and that's the reason why men do the indirect game. They feel like it somehow protects their ego, or they don't have to put up with the rejection. And but really, all it does is it solidifies your insecurity. And you want to get beyond this. You want to be able to know what true boldness and courage feels like. You want to cultivate that quality, and it's also a very attractive quality. And here's the thing too: most women do find that rather attractive, even if they're not interested. How attractive is it for a guy just to be so just open and just, yeah, tell you, and it's so upfront, it's so straightforward. Not only do women appreciate that, everybody appreciates that. It's very refreshing, very attractive in people. And even if like you're shaking, which I was at certain times when I was doing cold approaches, I was actually shaking, and I'd just come right out and say it. I was like, I don't do this very often, so I'm a little nervous. And then right away, when you call it out like that, it's like you know, deflate the balloon. And it was just sort of like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm a little nervous. No big deal. I can say that. Why? Because I'm okay with it. I'm okay with who I am. And as soon as you say that, oftentimes women would go, oh, no, 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 it's okay. And they would want to talk more, and they would find it interesting, because it usually doesn't happen to women every day. Now, here's the thing too. You might be thinking I'm talking about doing this in bars and clubs. And sure, if you go to bars and clubs and you see an attractive woman, I would absolutely urge you to go and talk to her. I'm not a big fan of I don't go to bars a lot, don't go to clubs a lot. Well, I'm married now, but even before, it wasn't my thing. Now, I did make myself do that because I wanted the experience. But the truth is, when you're in a bar or you're in a club, that's when most women are getting hit on. That's when they're getting hit on the most. That's when most guys are approaching them. And a lot of it has to do with what we call liquid courage. The guy drinks enough to feel confident enough to finally go and say something to a woman who he would never approach in broad daylight on the street or in a shopping mall or any of those things. But in a club, you go, oh, this is where it's okay to do this, and I can drink enough to feel confident. Stop that. Don't do that. The best time I found to approach a woman was in broad daylight, where she feels safe in public and she's least expecting it. And not only that, there's no other competition. There's no 10 guys trying to hit on her and she has her guard up. Like, that's not good odds. And she's ready for that kind of thing. She's bracing herself for that. And she probably, if it's been happening several times in a night, she's probably sick of it. But if she's shopping, or she's just walking down the street in a public place where there's lots of people, and you just walk up to her out of the blue, especially during her workday, like if she's on a break, or she has this routine in her life, and you come in and you sort of shake up that routine, you disrupt that routine by saying something nice to her out of the blue, and she's not expecting it, and she doesn't have 10 other guys, trying to do the same thing. This is extremely refreshing. This is really nice to have this kind of disruption, to hear something positive. Like right away, she will be more attracted to you than if you tried to do that in a club. So I know for most people, and I felt the same way when I first started doing that, it feels not right. It feels inappropriate. But the truth is, there's nothing inappropriate about that. As long as you're being nice, as long as you're being positive, as long as you're not doing anything threatening, and she feels safe because she's in public, there's nothing inappropriate about that. In fact, it's more appropriate. If you think about it, if you're in a bar and you're in a club, there's alcohol involved, there's a little bit of that tension of hostility with other men, and she might feel a little hostile or a pushback. It's like, this is not a good setting for this. A great setting to get to know someone, to find someone who could be that great match for you, is when all of that stuff is not present, and it's just you and her, and your honesty and your straightforwardness. That will go so much further. So what it comes down to is the more approaches you make, the more you date, right? I kind of had a formula in my mind, and after doing it enough times, I knew that if I made so many approaches in a week, that I would get X amount of dates, and then out of those dates, who knows where we would go next. If the date went well, maybe we would go to a second one. So I knew I had it set up for myself that I would do 10 cold approaches a week. I would make sure that I get 10 in there. And usually out of that, I would get 5 phone numbers. Okay, and then out of those 5 phone numbers, I would get 2 to 3 dates. So I created a very abundant dating life. In fact, I was dating so much that it almost started to feel like a full-time job. And I still wasn't finding who I was looking for, but I knew I was getting closer. And here was the thing too, like I know as being a guy, you will often have women who cancel dates on you last minute. Like it really sucks. I know I've been there many times. I had built up such an abundance of phone numbers and possible dates that even when someone would cancel on me like last minute, I could call someone else and fill in that date. That's what I mean by thinking like a salesperson. A salesperson, they have all their appointments. They have so many appointments lined up that when one cancels, they can usually round up another appointment. That's how fertile my dating life was at the time. Now, like I said, it did take a lot of work. It did take a lot of time. And at a certain point, I had to start making choices about that, which I'll mention in a moment. So in order to get what you want, you have to know what you want. How do you do that? You do that by dating a lot. When I got divorced, I couldn't honestly tell you what kind of woman I was looking for. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to date a lot. And as a result of dating a lot, I'm going to better understand what I like, what I don't like, what I'm looking for. Who is the right woman for me to finally settle down with? To think back on it, to think like, oh, I'm just kind of like every once in a while, finding a woman, going out on a date, hoping she's the right one. Maybe she's not. Like, that's not a good situation for you to find that right person. A good situation for you to find the right person is to spend perhaps a few years dating a lot to really find what it is you like, what really works for you, instead of coming at it from a desperation or a scarcity mindset where you're just trying to cling to one relationship and then jumping to the next one and to the next one whenever you can, or going through dry spells. You will cure all of that by doing consistent approaching. You do consistent approaching, you're doing consistent dating, you're learning more and more what it is you like. And the more clarity you have about that, the more you will be able to zero in on who it is that the kind of woman you want and pursue her. Think of it as an education. You are educating yourself. You're putting yourself out there and you're learning. You're dating and you're learning. So my story about all of this is it stretched on to more than 2 years of dating, and dating a lot. And I finally, at around 2.5 years of doing 10 approaches a week, I'm not kidding, it was well over 1,000 approaches that I made. And probably more than half the time I got rejected, whatever that means. But I was, you just learn that it doesn't really mean anything. None of that says anything about who I actually am. And you will find that too if you do this enough. I didn't think it was going to take this long either. After about 2.5 years, I was like, is this ever, am I ever going to find that woman? And I'm getting tired. I'm actually getting tired of dating. It just felt like I was, turning over a bunch of rocks, and I was never finding what I was looking for. So after a while, I finally said, okay, yeah, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a break. Been doing this thing for over 2 years, and I'm exhausted. I'm a little, maybe I'm even a little cynical. Like maybe she doesn't exist. Maybe I won't find the right person. But I do need a break. So I'm going to take a break. So I took 6 months off, and I didn't do any dating. And it was amazing how fast it all dried up. All that, what I call abundance in my dating life, went to poverty real fast. The moment I stopped putting myself out there, it was gone. I dabbled a little bit in online dating. None of it went really far. What those 6 months did for me, though, is it helped me sort of take my attention off of one thing and put it back on something else, which was better understanding what I was looking for, the kind of woman I was looking for. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that 6 months was a great incubation period for me to get really clear about who I was looking for and who I really wanted to spend my time with. So I put a lot of that attention time that I was giving to dating, I shifted it to my business, and I was working on an online training, the self-concept training that I do. And I got to the point where at the last part of it is about boundaries. And we do teach this in our self-concept program. So I started thinking about this with the boundaries, and I was like, I already knew it, but now I was teaching it. And I was like, you know what? Why did I never use this in dating? This would be perfect for dating. When you understand how you separate yourself from other people and how you connect yourself to other people based on this idea of a boundary that we're making up, but it's absolutely real. And we feel that when we put that boundary between us and other people, and we feel it when we expand it, include other people. I thought, yeah, I'm going to have to use this someday. And I also thought, I need to get out. I need to do something. It's been 6 months. I haven't been very social, but doing a lot of work. I need to get outside. It's a beautiful day. The sun was shining. It was perfect temperature. So I go downtown here in Santa Cruz, and I see this really attractive, very young woman walking down the street. And I thought, oh, wow, I want to meet her. But then I told myself, no, Damon, you're taking a break. But I was like, wait a minute, isn't the break over? And I was just doing this back and forth with myself, and I was trying to make every excuse possible to not approach her. And I'm like, oh, she's way too young, and she was very young. And I was just like, no, I can't do this. And finally I was like, the boundary stuff, let me try the boundary stuff. And so I realized what my boundary was, and then I expanded it around her, and I felt more connected. And I was like, okay, that's better, but I'm still not quite there. And so I dropped the boundary entirely. And that's another thing you can do. You can completely drop your boundaries, which will give you this sort of Zen kind of oneness feeling with everything around you, people, air, trees. And that's exactly what I felt. And then I looked at her and I was like, oh, wow. Like, it almost seems like, even though she was not paying any attention to me, it almost seems like she wants me to go and talk to her. So I walked up to her, I introduced myself. I noticed she had this cute little accent. And so I asked her about that, and it turned out she is from Romania. And I say is because now she is my wife. Yes, this is how I met my wife. And we've been together for 7 years now. And it's been the best relationship I have ever had, far exceeded my expectations. She was absolutely worth the wait. She was worth all of the work that I did. We are so incredibly compatible. And I hate to think that fear could have stopped me from going and approaching her, and I would have not lived the life that I've lived with her these past 7 years. It's scary to think about, but we let fear do that so many times. We let fear shape our reality. We let fear shape our future. So when it comes to sharing your life with a partner, this is pretty important stuff here. You don't want to just leave it up to the stars or the universe or anything like that. You have to put the effort in. The learning and the growth that you're going to go through when you do this will make you more attractive. It'll make you wiser about who you want to spend time with. So it's so important that you're willing to put in the effort, and that you take action, and that you do this. Now you can start doing this right now. You can decide, I'm going to go and approach 2 women I see. I'm going to go out into an area where I know there's women, and when I see at least 2 attractive ones, I'm going to go and say hi, introduce myself, let her know that you think she's cute. So that's how she knows that that's why you're talking to her, that you're attracted to her. and just strike up a conversation. I promise you, if you do this consistently, you will get results. You will become more courageous. You will better understand what you're looking for in a woman. You will become more attractive. You will find that woman. And if it takes 2 or 3 years, it's absolutely worth it. Take it from me. The last 7 years have been the best 7 years of my life. And so much of it has to do with my wife and the connection that we have. And like I said, this would not have been possible had I not done all the work that I did, put in all the effort that I did. You know, some people call it luck, and you can say that, or chance. And yeah, there's a certain element of that. But there's a saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And that's exactly what happened when I saw her walking down the street that day. Now, a lot of you are thinking, I can't go and do that, Damon. There's no way I can go and just walk up to a woman and do that. And what I would say is, oh, yes, you can. What is stopping you is your limiting beliefs. That's all it is. Your limiting beliefs that are trying to protect you. You're trying to protect your ego. And they're not bad, because they're trying to do a good thing for you, your beliefs. That's why they were created. But when you truly understand them, when you truly understand these beliefs and you're able to transform them, just like I transformed a belief that, are all women passive aggressive? And it was like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think it's that I'm attracting the wrong kind of woman. I'm putting something out there that's attracting the wrong kind of woman. That's my hypothesis, and I'm going to go test it. And I tested it, and I found out that, yeah, that is the truth. That, yeah, there are a certain small sector of women who are very passive aggressive. That's not all women. There's like so many wonderful women out there who would make great partners for so many men, and it's just such a shame that we have this disconnect that it makes it difficult. All you really have to do is get out there and start meeting women. So here's the thing. I know how tough it can be, and I had to work on my own limiting beliefs around this. So if you enjoyed this presentation and you want me to do a second one about limiting beliefs around dating, let me know in the comments below. If we get a good response to this, I'll come back and do a second part to it, and we'll go through how to change these limiting beliefs that you have that is preventing you from putting yourself out there. All right, take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.